MLS has 4 teams remaining in the quarterfinals of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. But as we all know, historically, this tournament has been a thorn in the side of Major League Soccer. And this year looks like it could be a difficult path for MLS to win for the first time since 2022. It was a pretty rough round of 16 for some MLS teams with huge comebacks in Mexico, almost in an embarrassing fashion. And we'll just have to see what happens going forward. But it's going to be an uphill climb for MLS. Hello, everyone. Welcome to MLS Moves, presented by FanDuel. Please make sure you like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I brought on my friend Eric Gomez to talk about what MLS's chances are going forward in the CCC in 2026, and also what his thoughts have been so far in this tournament. Eric, my friend. Last time we talked, it was the round 1 of CCC. And, I think I was a little pessimistic when we recorded, because you can't really ever be too optimistic about MLS's chances in this tournament. But, somehow I'm still deflated and just completely bummed. So how are you doing, my friend? It's been a while since we talked last. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I was at the Toluca versus San Diego FC second leg, which I'm sure you know by now. But you know what? I was pretty bummed myself. And I'll tell you why. I mean, I was rooting for San Diego in that fixture, 100%. That team clearly didn't exist when I was a kid. Clearly didn't exist even when I lived there last. But it's always such a great thing to see San Diego affixed to any first division sports team, especially a soccer team. So I was really excited to see them kind of try and pull off another unlikely upset. But yeah, it was really deflating. And I think it was more or less just the way things went, right? For the rest of the MLS teams facing off against Liga MX teams in that round. And gosh, you said something there at the top of the show that got me thinking. I wonder if it'll ever happen. It will happen, and I think we're all very aware that it will. I think more or less like the prediction that I had for you, the bold prediction that I had for you at the start of this tournament, we might still be off from that. And I think I said something along the lines of like next 6 CCCs, 3 MLS wins. I think we're still after. I mean, I thought this was going to be the tournament in which you had 3 MLS teams against 1 Liga MX team in those direct matchups. But we can get into that a little bit further along. Sure.
Oh, man, just so depressing. I after this, which after watching what I saw this past week, and not to say it wasn't already, but Leagues Cup is officially dead to me. Like, it is so dead. Like, I think they should just go ahead and cancel it.
100%.
Because it really just shows how little it matters. Eric, they created this tournament for a money grab. You and I both know that, obviously, because they wanted to get the Liga MX MLS, passed across to full extent. But it's essentially, to me, was a tournament created to give MLS a bigger chance to win this tournament, because they always win, the top 3 seeds. They get 3 extra CCC spots, and it doesn't even matter. It does not even matter. I mean, we're sitting here today, and the 8 remaining teams, are 4 teams from each league, Liga MX and MLS, and there were 6 Liga MX teams to qualify for the tournament. And there's still 4 remaining, while there was 10 MLS teams, only 4 are remaining. So, I mean, it really doesn't even matter. You get more swings and you're still not having any better results than your counterpart. So let's talk about the games. But before I do, I want to ask you a question, okay? And then we'll expand on it, go broader on all these games. But what was your biggest surprise of the round of 16? Like, of all the games, what was your biggest surprise? Because there's a lot, honestly.
Yeah, let's do one on each side. I think the MLS side of the bracket, that's pretty easy. Nashville knocking off Inter Miami. You were pretty shocked by that as well. I mean, I saw your your tweets after that game, like literally calling out Jorge Mas, which I think is is absolutely the right way to go. I mean, this is a guy who I think is very, very proud of his team. It's literally the crown jewel in his business empire, and he wants this team to make waves, not just at the MLS level, but at the international level, at the CONCACAF level, and even at the world stage. So it's pretty disheartening to see a team like that go out in the round of 16 against and again, no shade to Nashville because they played their asses off. That was a great game. But ultimately, Inter Miami should have had that, right? On the Liga MX side of things, we only had one, Liga MX versus Liga MX round of 16 game. But I'm going to go with Tigres coming back and beating Cincinnati because, honestly, after that first leg, even with the issues that they had with travel and whatnot, they were tired. They had, I think, less than 24 hours in the States before that match came to pass. I thought 3-0 clinched it for them. And Cincinnati, they come out in this second leg, and they're absolutely shell shocked, man. And the goals just keep raining down. I thought that they were going to put up more of a fight. I mean, clearly this was not a piece of cake like it was in the first round for them playing that Dominican team, but still, I thought it was pretty damn impressive that they went out there, won 3-0 in the first leg, and they had absolutely everything because they had so many chances to put that game away, and they just didn't. So I'm surprised in a positive sense that Tigres were able to come back from that and knock them off like what minute 97, as it were.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
No, it was a very, very exciting game, and definitely was a surprise to me as well. So let's start off with the first match, okay? The first matchup, Toluca versus San Diego, okay?
Right.
So San Diego had a hell of a performance against Toluca in the first match. They even went down to 9 men, and they still were able to get a result against what many people, including yourself, the favorite Toluca in this
Right.
tournament, right? So they had a
Yeah.
great performance. San Diego FC has been playing very well in MLS in 2026. So after that first leg, Eric, I was thinking, man, San Diego might be I was texting you. I was like, San Diego
Yeah.
might be the real deal, man. And then they go to Toluca and just get smacked around like a little ugly brother, right? I mean, they just got
Hmm.
smacked around. What was your takeaway from that series? I mean, because I thought San Diego had a chance heading into leg two.
They had a big chance. I think that last minute penalty kick awarded to Toluca in the first leg, that was the saving grace. I think it would have been a lot harder for them to, come up with a 2-goal comeback in the second leg, regardless of the fact that they got 4. And honestly, they could have gotten 7 or 8 because I was at that game, and it was just crazy how big the gulf in class was between both of those teams on that night. A lot of it had to do with the crowd. The crowd was absolutely electric in Toluca. Also, you have to say it, the altitude. A lot of the players just looked a touch too slow on the San Diego side, and I think that really got to them. But, when we're talking about this San Diego FC team, I think Mikey Vara said it really well after the game was over. So, look, 23 months ago, this club didn't exist. So to have a group of guys come together so quickly, deal with the stuff that they've had to deal with, including the Chucky Lozano saga, and basically knock off a team that was 100% the favorite against, even though I picked San Diego in that game, in that series. I thought they played their hearts out, but ultimately they should have gone all out in the first leg. And when they gave up that second goal, I mean, honestly, I was kind of written in stone at that point. I figured, if Toluca they get a quick goal in the second leg, it's all over. To their credit, San Diego held out for what, 42, 43 minutes, but they could have been down 3-0 at that point. So it was kind of you could see it in the tea leaves. The players didn't know how to react. I think Mikey's a fantastic coach, but even he knew that physically his guys couldn't react. They were super, they were just frustrated with the way that the officiating, no shade to the officials, by the way. I thought they did a really good job, but they were just trying to CONCACAF the match up and try to see if they could get a cheap PK their way, if they could try to, and again, like, Toluca had a goal disallowed, man, pretty early on. I would say that, the referee was pretty fair because San Diego was given a lifeline at that point, and they couldn't take advantage. So once they scored that first goal, like again, the die was cast. I knew that physically they wouldn't be able to come back in the second half because it was just so hard to, play at that top physical level when you're what, like even 1,000 feet above Mexico City's altitude level. That's how high Toluca is. So again, no shade to San Diego. They could have handled their business at home. Same as I think that's a really different issue than what Cincinnati had to go through in their second leg.
Well, I want to say too, you were at the game. I had never seen Toluca Stadium. I think I've watched maybe on the road before in this tournament, but stadium looked absolutely incredible, man. That thing looked like, I mean, it looked like the place was like the atmosphere was just absolutely incredible. And to your point about San Diego FC, this is their second year playing. They've
Right.
never really been on the road like this. They've only been on the road in MLS. They've never been in a tournament like this. So this is different. This is their first exposure to international football, and you can just tell they looked very inexperienced. They were not prepared to play in a hostile environment like Toluca against a team of that quality, and they folded like a damn chair. I mean, they really did. It was very, very bad. And I'll say this, Eric, because I did make some posts after the first leg. I said the wheels are falling
Right.
off, and they obviously made a comeback. I'm not surprised they lost to Toluca because I think you and I both thought that was going to happen prior to the tournament starting. I just
Sure.
never thought they were going to lose in an embarrassing fashion like this, where the aggregate was 3-2, and then they end up losing 6-3 on aggregate. Like that's just the surprising part to me about that
Well,
matchup.
yeah, I mean, we talked about the physical aspect of it. We talked about the crowd just being electric. I've been to a lot of stadiums, man. I've been to League MX stadiums, MLS stadiums. I've been to stadiums in Brazil. I've been, all over Latin America and parts of Europe. And what I can tell you is that particular crowd on that particular night, that was a top 10 crowd for me, just all time. They were so good. So, let's not discount that because we had San Diego FC players. I was sitting in the press box, and we could see because this is a relatively small stadium. It's built so that any seat you're sitting in is the best seat in the house, which, by the way, is a great way to build a stadium. But we were looking at the San Diego FC players on the bench. Man, they were getting into it with the fans because the fans were getting into their head, and it was all just it was all banter, man. There was no, I mean, you saw the game. There was no beer cups, beer cans being thrown onto the field. None of the crazy like CONCACAF stuff that we usually see. It was all clean in that regard. So I think again, all credit to San Diego because even though they knew that physically they couldn't hang with Toluca in the second half because they were getting tired by the minute and just not being able to lift their heavy legs. Mikey Vares went down swinging. I mean, I could see him after San Diego FC again, like lost, and that's going to be an issue for him going forward. I think his team's pretty undisciplined, and I think that's going to hurt him in MLS. Clearly more so than in CONCACAF because he's not in the tournament anymore. But you can't have 3 red cards in elimination games, basically, right?
No.
So when he had that player come off, I forget his name right now at number 87, and they went down to 10 men. Mikey was like, I don't care, man. Let's do 3-2-4 was his indication. I mean, isn't that insane? Like you're going to concede when you've got 4 players up front, just 3 in the back, and you're literally down 1 man, right? So at that point, I kind of tip my cap to Mikey because he's like, it really doesn't matter if we lose 1-0, 2-0, or if we lose 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, you're still going to be out of the tournament. So we might as well just kind of go down swinging. Um, it's not an embarrassing loss in my mind. Just again, given that this is a new team, I think they'll be back. I think they've got a really smart um, technical director, sporting director in Tyler Heaps. I think they've got a really good coach and a really good infrastructure, an owner who gives a crap about them, fans who are just, literally, I think one of the best fan bases in MLS, like right off the bat. So they'll be back. This is a good kind of first experience for them. And hopefully next season, if they do come back, then now they'll be ready to face those types of hostile environments that you alluded to.
100%. And also, real quick, I'm just going to briefly mention this because, Mount Pleasant played LA Galaxy. That wasn't really that exciting of a matchup.
Yeah.
The Galaxy won 6-0 in aggregate on that. Now, this obviously more in your wheelhouse, your expertise. Cruz Azul versus Monterrey. I think I watched the first leg, and I think the second leg there was another game going on. I want to say that Monterrey, did Cruz Azul win 3-2? Oh yeah, 3-2 on the first leg, and then they sealed the deal with a 1-1 draw in the second leg. What's your big takeaway from this? Has either of those teams impressed you, or is it about what you expected between them and that matchup?
Monterrey has been pretty bad. I mean, they've gone through a coaching change here recently, so I was surprised that they were able to hang in that first leg, even though it was at home, right? So they were up 2-1 going into halftime, and then I figured Cruz Azul would kind of set up shop and be like, all right, we'll take care of business in the second leg, and they were like, hell no, let's do it now. 2 goals in the last 10 minutes of play. And that kind of sealed it for me. I knew that going back to Puebla, because they're not playing in Mexico City right now. Their stadium is the Estadio Azteca, which is pretty close to being re-inaugurated here with Mexico versus Portugal. But they have to play in a city that's literally 2 hours west of
I was wondering why it was so damn empty. It looked terrible. Like there was no one there. No one was there at all. Like, I don't even think the janitors were there.
It's not a home stadium. It's not a home stadium for them, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the reason why they went all out in the first leg. They were like, you know what? We're not going to have this like massive fan support when we go back home, so we might as well do this. But this is a team, Cruz Azul, that is head and shoulders above, I would say, any other team now in the field except for Toluca. Like these are the 2 favorites moving forward, and these are the 2 favorites coincidentally in Liga MX, right? They've got so many good players. And I would, even in that second leg, they were up a goal. Their coach was so confident, Nicolas Larcamon, that he was like, I'm going to rest 3 or 4 guys. I'm going to, this is done and dusted. We're good. Even when they give up that early goal, he was still fine because he knew that Monterrey needed another goal, which they were never going to get because defensively they were so sound. So, not surprised by the result. I'm surprised by the way the 180 minutes or so kind of developed on their own, but the better team won for sure.
And then LAFC played Alajuelense in the round of 16. They struggled against, I don't know if you got to catch any of those legs between LAFC and Alajuelense, but they struggled mightily against them, even at home and then on the road. So I personally feel like LAFC, which we'll talk about our predictions, after we're done breaking down these games, but sure. I feel like LAFC are going to struggle based on what I saw so far, especially on the road. Now, I guess I'll ask you that when we talk about them facing Cruz Azul. But I in this series, if you're an LAFC fan, I would definitely be concerned about what you saw in your showing against Alajuelense.
100%. I mean, it's really difficult for me because, I might be covering Liga MX basically for the better part of my career, but I have a lot of love for MLS. I know a lot of folks who work for different MLS clubs and for MLS itself. So rest assured, like there's always a lot of really warm feelings, and I want MLS teams to do well. I came away from that LAFC Alajuelense series thinking Alajuelense, like they deserve more, to be honest with you. I knew that it was going to be a challenge for LAFC defensively to match up with Alajuelense, but still, they struggled, as you said, mightily against this team over 180 minutes. And honestly, this Costa Rican team had them against the ropes several times. So, you can make the argument that they deserve more, as I said, but also they were pretty damn wasteful. So, when you've got this goal 92nd minute from David Martinez and everybody's just going nuts on that LAFC bench, but mostly they were kind of shell-shocked because they were this close to going into a penalty kick shootout in a foreign country against, again, a hostile crowd and just, basically having it go down to a coin flip. So they ultimately did right by their fans. They ultimately did right by themselves. I think it was a pretty good match tactically on the LAFC side, but it seemed for very long stretches of time that Alajuelense, honestly, like it seemed like they were the better team.
No, I agree. And that's why I'm worried about LAFC and their chances in the next round. We talked about this a little bit earlier, Miami and
Yeah.
Nashville. I thought that was a very lackluster series in
Yeah.
general from both teams. Just to touch on it real quick, you mentioned it. Jorge Mas came out after winning MLS Cup. He said, "Hey, we like winning this trophy. This is very special to us, but we have our eyes on a bigger prize. We are, aiming to win Champions Cup. This is our goal for 2026. We want to take this club to levels MLS has never seen." They go out and they sign, Bertarame. They go out and sign Dane St. Clair. They sign all these players trying to put together a team that's CONCACAF ready. And
Right.
Eric, they lose in the first round they play in. They get and if I told you or anyone who follows either of these clubs closely that Nashville SC's two best players would not score a single goal in either leg, most people would say that, okay, well, Miami's definitely winning this series.
Yeah,
And that
they're
wasn't the
done,
case.
right?
They're done. Exactly.
I mean, I had to watch this game like, the next day because I was driving out to Toluca because we were gonna go to that game. Myself and Darren Smith, who's the color commentator for San Diego FC and a good friend of mine. And we were talking about this on the way. I was like, man, it's gonna be so cool to have Messi at Azteca playing against Club America. Like, I can't believe that's gonna happen. Plus, Mexico's playing Portugal at the time. We felt maybe there's a chance to see Cristiano Ronaldo at that stadium. So essentially, we were looking at this scenario where Cristiano and Messi could have been at the Estadio Azteca like 10 days apart from each other. It was absolute nuts. And now, none of those guys are coming down here. The XG, because I had to watch this game. You said it was lackluster. You're right. But even then, Nashville, they didn't have better chances than Miami during that game. Like, how sorry does Jorge Mas and the rest of the Inter Miami crew feel about signing Germán Berterame and paying all that money for him? The guy has just not done absolutely anything since joining Inter Miami from Monterrey. I think that's why they basically drove him to the airport. Like, they knew that this guy was not, having a rough patch or whatever. And I don't know what's going on with him. Is he starstruck by playing next to Messi? Because, ultimately he's a Mexican national team player, but the guy's from Argentina, right? So I have no idea why he's having such a hard time um, playing for this team, scoring for this team, contributing to this team. And after Messi scored that goal, I think everybody on that team kind of relaxed. I was like, dude, it's the 7th minute. So Nashville hung around, and then they get a clear chance towards the end. And all right, we're just going to ride this away goal. I felt a surprising lack of urgency from Miami in those last 15 minutes. I'm like, your tournament is on the line. What are you doing? And they just kind of fell flat.
And I think that that's a managerial problem. I've never really been sold on Mascherano. I don't know if I've asked you what your thoughts were on him, but I'm not really sold on him as a manager. And I think that
Yeah.
this series is a perfect example. You take you don't take you take the lead in the match, but you still need to keep your foot on the gas. And after the 7th minute goal, they're just completely conservative, acting like almost like they have the away goal lead or something, man. And it's like, or it's in the bag. And I just think that was a very poor approach. And it's even during the season, there really hasn't been a striker that has thrived under
Right.
Mascherano. Luis Suarez, now obviously Luis Suarez is a shell of his former self. I don't know if you ever heard me say this. I call him La Tortuga because he's so slow
Yeah.
and he, at this point in his career. But even he had a significant drop off last year compared to the first year under Tata Martino and Inter Miami. He went from 23 goals to like 9 goals last year in MLS. So I just don't think the system really helps striker. I just don't think strikers thrive under Mascherano. I just don't think that. I think his system is really Messi based, relying on him to do everything, and it complicates. It complicates things because if teams box him in or close down on him, the whole thing falls apart. So
Yeah.
I just think that it's not that I think Bertarame is bad. I think he's good. I think me and you both thought he was a good signing.
Right.
I just think he's being misused. And now Inter Miami has to pay the price. They just completely fell on their face. And this is probably the biggest disgrace in their club's history because of what their owner, the target he put on their back.
100%. I mean, ultimately, I think Berterame is kind of a smart signing because he's not necessarily used to being a straight up number nine. He can play in a variety of positions as a forward. And it's always going to be difficult for anybody going into that particular team when you've got Messi just handling the offensive load and handling the ball as much as he does. So if you don't have good chemistry with him, it's going to be very, very difficult to kind of, mesh into that team, mesh into that system, and score as many goals as you can. When Berterame was playing for Monterrey, especially the last 6 to 12 months, it was a lot easier for him to find chances to score because the team would play for him, right? So Inter Miami, they're never going to do that. They're never going to play for him, and he has to adapt. So he's basically playing himself out of a World Cup spot at this point. Honestly, I mean, I think there are better players in that Mexico pool, and he's going to question himself. It's like, dude, was this worth it? Because I'm playing myself out of a World Cup, and now I don't have the CONCACAF Champions Cup to look forward to. He might end up on the bench, honestly, at some point this season.
What a disaster. Yeah, he actually didn't even start their last game. They
Right.
against New York City, and they won without him starting. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see what they end up doing with him going forward for the rest of the season. Next game we had was Club America versus the Union. Now, I didn't really think much of this series because the Union are just so bad this year
Right.
compared to last year. I thought Club America would win this with ease. Now, I watched the first leg, but then the second leg didn't really interest me because it was on the road, and I just didn't think that Club or the Union had a chance. Now, are you concerned with Club America? Like, do you think? I mean, the first game I saw, it's like, man, this team just doesn't really wow me. Like, I
No.
wasn't too impressed with them at all.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think I'm worried, and I have been worried for the last couple of months. This is not the team that won 3 Liga MX titles in a row. Not a year ago, really. It hasn't even been a year since their last title, but um, this team is going through kind of a generational shift. We don't have the type of players or the type of talented players, I should say, that carried this team to glory. So, Alvaro Fidalgo, he's out in Real Betis uh, for Spain. Julian Quinones, he's playing in Saudi Arabia. Henry Martin, he's been injured for the better part of a year. Alejandro Sendejas, who's, obviously pretty sad that he's not being taken to the World Cup by Pochettino and the U.S. men's national team. He's been another player that's been injured over the last few weeks and months. So that's the core of this Club America squad that has been so successful over the last 2 3 years. None of those players are either at the club anymore or have an opportunity to be 100%. So what's left? A very, very good coach, a very talented coach that has been able to cobble together a roster with a lot of players on loan, a lot of Brazilian players on loan. So I was excited about Rafael Veiga because he's been just a massively talented player in Brazil over the last 10 years or so, and a national team player at that. But ultimately, if you have 8 or 9 new faces coming in to play Liga MX and CONCACAF Champions Cup at the same time, that's going to be a tough sell, and it's going to be really hard for those guys to adapt as quickly as you would want them to. That being said, I thought the Philadelphia series was kind of never in doubt because of precisely what you said. Philly's been so bad this season, but I was definitely not scared, but I was pretty certain that if Inter Miami got their stuff together, they would wipe the floor with Club America, like Estadio Azteca or no. Like, this is a team that on paper is way less talented than Inter Miami at this point in time. So just moving forward, they kind of dodged a bullet there, but I mean, Nashville, they're no pushover, so we'll see what's gonna go down there.
Yeah, I agree. I that's one to keep an eye on as far as MLS's chances. We'll see what their Nashville SC, which we'll talk about in a little bit, can do against Club America. The next one, biggest surprise to me, and I think you said this earlier in
Yeah.
the show: Tigres versus Cincinnati. Cincinnati 3-0 win at home against Tigres. Looks like they got it locked up. All they have to do is just not screw it up in Monterrey against Tigres, right?
Right.
And they have the advantage, Eric. If they score one goal, that means that Tigres would have to score 5 in order to advance the next round. And my God, Eric, they scored 5. They scored 5 goals to win this, man. And the crazy part is they could have had more. I mean, they were just constant. Like, I mean, it looked like an exhibition game. I don't know what your takeaway was from it, but it looked like we were watching one of the best teams in the world play an absolute pedestrian team. And the way Cincinnati played in this series, or at least the second leg, they have no business advancing to the next round. Tigres was clearly the more talented, better team. And, this was honestly the most embarrassing performance for Major League Soccer in the whole tournament.
Yeah, so with Tigres, it's really interesting because this is another team going through a generational shift. Like, we're long past the days when Gignac and Noel Guzman and Guido Pizarro, who's now their coach, were the main players on that team. They've gotten younger. You've got guys like Marcelo Flores, who's the Canadian player. Rodrigo Aguirre, who ironically was playing for Club America, didn't do much. And now that he's with Tigres, he's absolutely been killing it. Oziel Herrera, who could have gone to Cuba, could have gone to Mexico, ultimately decides to play for Mexico. He's looking for a World Cup spot. So this is a team that has a lot of talent, but it's a lot of, younger, unproven talent mixed in with these veterans that have been there, done that. That being said, like I said, 3-0, that should have done it. It was very difficult for Tigres to come in and say, we're going to score 3 goals or 4 goals and not have any sort of chance come in our way defensively, because Cincinnati, they proved to be so good in the first leg at countering Tigres and taking advantage of their slow defensive setup. I figured they would do that at least a couple of times in the second leg. They were able to do it once, and they scored off of that. Still, as you said, there were so many points during that second leg where it's like, I kind of wonder, like, was it a World Baseball Classic type situation with the manager? Like, do they not know that if they lose this game by a certain amount, like, they're out? It was crazy. There was no urgency, literally no urgency. And Tigres, it was very similar to the Toluca San Diego second leg, where it's like, if they can score 7 or 8 goals in that game, I'm not surprised, because they had so many chances.
Yeah, I was just so disappointed with the effort there, and it was embarrassing. And I went on a tweeting spell after that. I was just so pissed off. So that was by far the worst performance for me in the entire tournament. And then last but not least, we had another good matchup. We had the Sounders versus the Whitecaps. This is another surprise, because the Whitecaps were a team that I thought maybe could have a redemption arc in 2026. They went to the final last year and played Cruz Azul. They got wiped by Cruz Azul 5-0. But this was a team that I thought would have a chance to really redeem themselves. They got a little bit different club. They have Thomas Muller, who's obviously a vet who's played in big games throughout his career. And they go down 3-0 at home to to Seattle. They get absolutely wiped. And then they have to play their second leg. I don't know if you know this, but the second leg wasn't actually at Seattle. It was in Spokane. It's like 4 or 5 hours away from the stadium. Yep. So you could argue that was just as equally as a Vancouver, like a away game for both teams. And Vancouver still were not able to really get anything going. Ended up in a 2-1 loss for the Whitecaps. The Whitecaps lost 5-1 on aggregate. That was a huge surprise to me as well.
Yeah, I expected Vancouver fans to show out for both of these games, and they didn't really do that, honestly. I mean, I thought this one was kind of done and dusted from the first leg, and we had San Diego's own Paul Arriola scoring a brace there, which was fantastic for him. Vancouver should have been stronger. Honestly, this is one of those series where both teams know each other. They know each other well. They're regional rivals. It really shouldn't have been that big of a margin between both of these teams. And I wondered there for a while, like, was this honestly just a big priority for Jesper Sorensen and for Vancouver in general? Because it really didn't feel like it. They did very, very well for themselves, obviously, last season in MLS, and they got to the MLS Cup final. But I don't know, like, there are certain teams and there are certain coaches, regardless of the league, where it's like they don't, for whatever reason, fancy doing too well, or they don't want to take attention away from the league and go out for these cup tournaments, even if they're international cup tournaments. So I was left with that feeling, especially after the first leg.
Yeah, I think that maybe they just felt deflated, kind of like what you said. They had a rough year last year losing finals. I mean, they lost the Champions Cup final, which no one thought they were going to go to. Then they got a chance to go to MLS Cup final. They lost that one in heartbreaking fashion. So it did kind of, it was a head scratcher, kind of makes you wonder what the deal was there effort wise. But we get to the final 8 teams. We were down to the quarterfinals. Eric, this is the exciting part. Well, maybe not for MLS. Okay, so let's start off with Toluca, the Galaxy. I want you to tell me what's going to happen in this game. What is your prediction? Obviously, they have to play each other away in a home. How do you think this is going to go?
Man, so I mean, you're upset, you're sad, but ultimately we still got what we wanted, right? We got like these direct MLS Liga MX matches as we get closer and closer to the end of the tournament. I honestly think that you want to start with Tigres in Seattle, right? Um, Gosh, you can get Tigres on an off night and you can pummel them. Since I think Cincinnati showed that.
Yeah.
Seattle is a team that, quite honestly, they have one of the best fan bases in MLS, and they've kind of proven that over and over again for years. But this, I think it's a disadvantage for them, for Seattle, to have that first leg away. Because I think they're going to try and pour it on the same way they did against FC Cincinnati. And I think it's going to be one of those series where if Seattle's not careful, they might be down 2 goals or even 3 goals going back home to Seattle. Because, again, we've seen how explosive this team is offensively. If I were Seattle, and this is one of the best run organizations in MLS, one of the best coaches in the history of MLS, I'd sit back on them. I'd sit back and I'd counter the hell out of them because their defensive unit is slow. And again, Cincinnati showed us that in the first leg of their particular series. So I think, all that being said, I think it's going to be it's going to come down to whoever scores more away goals. And gosh, if it's offense versus offense, I think I like Tigres a little more, honestly. I'd have to say they're the favorites.
I think Tigres is I think they're gonna probably handle Seattle pretty well. I think that game against Cincinnati kind of awoken the beast in them a little bit. Like it's a confidence game.
Sure.
So I think that Tigres and Seattle to Monterrey is a long trip. That's a long trip. Like we just said, their first round game was not that far. It's the closest MLS team to them, right, city-wise. This is one of the furthest possible distances you could go in this tournament, and that's what they're going to have to do. So that could be, that's why I don't feel very easy. I think Tigres is going to win that. And it's no hate towards Seattle. I would love for Seattle to win, but I think Tigres' attacking power is just too much. It's overwhelming at times. I mean, they just scored 5 goals on Cincinnati and just absolutely pummeled them. What about this next matchup, Nashville SC versus Club America? Now, you said earlier if it was Inter Miami, you would have felt better about that matchup.
Right.
Do you feel like Nashville has a chance?
Yeah, and one last thing on Seattle, like I think the issue with them, as I said, they're going to go clip to clip with Tigres' defense. Like Seattle, I think they've scored 5 goals all season on the MLS side of things.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So their defense is really good, but I think Tigres is just they've got too much firepower. I think it's the absolute opposite with Club America. They've had such an issue with scoring, but then again, Nashville has had an issue with scoring as well. And this might be one of those boring Inter Miami versus Nashville type ties, man. I think, on the Club America side, their coach pretty much knows it's the end of the road for him. I think he's probably going to be looking for a new job. He's not going to be fired or anything, but it's going to be kind of parting of the ways type thing. After the type of success that he's had, he could basically have any job that he wants in Brazil or even in Spain, which is what he wants to do after the World Cup. He wants to go out on a high note. I think winning the CONCACAF Champions Cup would be the ultimate feather in his cap. But if it's not Nashville, they at this point in time do not have what it takes to get out of the semifinal round. I think every team that potentially could make it to the semifinals is going to be better than them. So I think what's going to put them over the top maybe for this round is just having the chance to go back home. This is a team that has not played at the Estadio Azteca for nearly 2 years now. So
That's
having that,
crazy.
yeah, having what 50,000 fans maybe like pile into the Estadio Azteca and root for their team in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, that might be enough. But I honestly think this. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this was like a 1-0 aggregate, dude. Honestly, like that. I'm talking about a just a boring 180 minutes of soccer based on what I've seen from both of these teams, not just in this tournament, but in their respective
League play.
competitions. Yeah,
Yeah. I would say that I think that America has the advantage because of what you're saying about Estadio Azteca opening up. It's almost like a wrong place, wrong time. I think that maybe is going to give them that, like, rejuvenate them
sure.
to a certain degree. And some of these guys you said earlier that they've gotten all these pieces. I mean, I think maybe eventually they're going to work out and they're going to fit in. So, like, you obviously would rather catch a team like that in the early stages rather than when they settle in. So
Yeah,
I just don't think Nashville SC, if they can't score and they
right.
got to go down to Mexico and they got to get a goal on the road, I think they're in trouble. So I would pick. I think America's going to win this series too. I don't know if it's going to be a blowout or anything like that. I would say maybe like a 3-1 aggregate, honestly. But I do think that America is going to win this series.
I mean,
Honestly,
Nashville fans might be like, "Hey, Eric, hold on, like, dude, we're top of the Eastern Conference. We're like doing so well in MLS play, but I mean, look at the teams that they've played and look at the times when they've played those particular teams to start the season. I don't think that, you know, to this point, um, excluding that nil-nil draw at FC Dallas, like I don't think they've played a team like Inter Miami or Club America so far this season on the MLS side of things, right? So this is a completely different animal. Plus, again, like every single time you've got an MLS team coming down to Mexico City, it's not just Azteca, but it's the altitude, it's the aura of it. It does come into play. So it's going to be very, very difficult for Nashville to be able to come in and just like beat up on Club America the way that they did against Orlando City a couple of nights ago.
yeah. And the next matchup is Cruz Azul versus LAFC. Now, this one that people, I might get in trouble for this one, but I'll start off with this one. I think LAFC are in trouble, Eric, because they played Alajuelense. They
Right.
struggled in that second leg. The altitude in Costa Rica, they were sweating. They looked exhausted. They had heavy legs. I remember 2 years ago in 2024 when Columbus Crew had to go on the road and play. Not no, that was that. I'm sorry, that was Pachuca.
Right.
Last year the Whitecaps had to play them last year. They had to go to Cruz Azul, play them, and they got. I just they were not ready for that type of environment and that type of, because they even called. I remember they said Jesper Sorensen or their actual their technical director called the crew and asked them, what would you do differently? Like, what would you have prepared for differently to get ready for this altitude, for this game, all this stuff. And they did all these weird um, preparation things to get ready for it. And it didn't work at all. It was actually worse. And so if LAFC is struggling against Alajuelense, I think they're going to struggle mightily against Cruz Azul.
Yeah.
And here's another thing, Eric. LAFC, I'm they are not as good as their record says. They can't score
Agreed.
goals. They
Agreed.
cannot score goals. And I think Cruz Azul is a team that's going to challenge them because they're not only good defensively, they're good in the attack as well. So this is going to be the most complete team they played all season long.
Agreed. I mean, it's a little bit what I was just saying about Nashville, right? Like, you know, what your record is does say a lot about you, but you kind of have to put that into context. And it's just, MLS teams, the season has barely started for them. League MX teams have been in competition basically nonstop since last August. And now you've got this Cruz Azul team that is looking to win, the double. Honestly, they want to win the league. They want to win CONCACAF. I said it a few minutes ago. I think they are the best team remaining in this tournament, other than Toluca. Um, and LAFC just really didn't show me much against Alajuelense. I mean, again, like I came away from that series thinking, gosh, man, it honestly would have been cool to see Alajuelense move on through. They kind of deserved it. But LAFC, what I will say for them, I mean, they've got the firepower. It's just not kind of, things aren't clicking for them at this point in CONCACAF, but they've got the firepower. They've got really good players that I think could potentially hurt Cruz Azul's defense, specifically in the first leg. And I think that's always going to be an advantage for MLS teams, especially when they need to come to Mexico City to play the second leg. Just go all out at home, and try to put these guys up against it minute one. And if you're pressing them consistently, then, you might get a couple of goals here or there. And if you're able to, make sure that they don't score on you and get that all important away goal, then there's everything to play for, even in a hostile environment like Mexico City. So ironically, they haven't shown me much, but I still think that having that first leg at home with the type of players that they have is going to be very important for them. I think they have let's call it this. They have a puncher's chance to get through. Honestly, it would be surprising if they beat Cruz Azul, because Cruz Azul is such a good team, but they do have a puncher's chance. I kind of see it like 75-25 in Cruz Azul's favor.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I think so far that you and I both agree that the Liga MX teams have an advantage in all these series so far. I think we both agree with that. Okay, so final game, Toluca versus the Galaxy. I think so the Galaxy are not very good again this year. They've struggled. They really haven't been tested in this tournament because they've been playing like the easiest schedule I've ever seen in my life. I didn't even know Mount Pleasant was a team until like 2 weeks ago. No offense to them. I never heard of them before. And Toluca is an absolute dog. I mean, they scored 4 goals in one game against San Diego. And San Diego, I can assure you, is a much better, well-sounded team than the Galaxy.
Yeah, for
sure. When I tell you this, I'm not even joking. I'm going to look you straight in the eyes and tell you this. I think there's a chance that this game could be 8-9 on aggregate, 8-0, 9-0 on aggregate.
Wow.
I think that could happen.
Yeah, I'd like to argue with you. I mean, it might not be 8-9-0 or whatever, but I think you're going to see a golf in class the way you saw in that second leg against San Diego FC. And I think Toluca have had their sort of wake up call in this tournament. They've got one of the best coaches in Liga MX's history in Antonio Mohamed. He's a guy that has, basically won everything that you can win coaching in Liga MX. And before this tournament started in Toluca, they were like, hey, we haven't won this particular tournament. We haven't been CONCACAF Kings since 2003. Like, can you take us to the top of the mountain? So he's not necessarily looking to go back to back to back in Liga MX, even though right now it looks like there's a good chance he might. But, just imagine a team like Toluca being able to win 2 out of the last 3 Liga MX titles, or even 3 of the last 3 Liga MX titles, plus CONCACAF, make it into the Club World Cup, whenever that might be. I mean, that would just be absolutely huge for them. And when they went to San Diego, I did feel like they underestimated that team a bit. And, their coach said it as much. They were like, you know what? When I came away from that first match thinking we messed up because we're a much better team than they were, people called me arrogant. This is what he said during the press conference after that second game. But I was confident in my team's abilities. Can you argue with him, honestly? Like, that's a very, very, very good team. Their attacking prowess is fantastic. Like I said, they left so many goals on the table in that second match against San Diego FC. They've got the advantage of, home field advantage against anybody who comes into their building, whether it's Liga MX or MLS, especially MLS with the altitude. LA Galaxy, man, I mean, they might have they absolutely are like the biggest underdogs out of the 4 series.
So you and I both expect it to be all 4 Liga MX teams to the semifinals, and that I mean, that's the most likely. I'm not saying. I think the best chance probably of any
Nashville,
team,
right?
Nashville versus Club
For sure.
America. I just don't feel good about that one either. So that's why I've been so frustrated, because I just think that that's what we're heading for. And this would be the first time in years that it's been all Liga MX teams in the semifinals. We're not even talking about a final.
Right.
I think the last time it was a final Liga MX versus Liga MX was 2022. I can't even tell you the last time it was all Liga MX teams in the semifinals. It's been years. So And it was just because the expectations we talked about earlier, 10 teams for MLS. It just feels like that this is one of the worst ideal crops you can have of teams representing you in the quarterfinal. No, and I don't mean that to dig at any teams
Just
in
bad
MLS.
matchups, though.
It's just bad matchups. Yeah, it's not favorable to what your style is and what you would want to be playing on the road, and obviously the team you'd want to go against at this early. So I'm very pessimistic at this point. I think we're heading for another Liga MX final win, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a couple of weeks once we get to the semifinals. But I will say this, Eric, to close off with my final thoughts. This is probably one of the worst case scenarios you could have if you're rooting for MLS to win it.
I know. And honestly, if you're a Leagues Cup exec, this could probably be one of the worst case scenarios too. Because, like, what's the argument for keeping Leagues Cup around, even with the new format? Yeah, we're going to have some games in Mexico. Hey, that's great. But this is what happens more often than not when you're able to have, equal number of games in the States, equal number of games in Mexico. Ultimately, you have no argument to say, to kind of, keep those games in a majority space in the United States for Leagues Cup, other than it being a cash grab and other than it being kind of a way to balance things out for MLS teams. Dude, we're both Americans. This is not something that Americans should be proud of. You need that extra help. Otherwise, you won't be competitive. That's really sad. I don't think Leagues Cup does any good to the MLS fans' psyche, because it gets them all riled up. It gets them excited. It's like, hey, man, we run this thing, and we are absolutely going to be able to beat Liga MX next time we're in CONCACAF Champions Cup. And then what happens? It's, Lucy pulling the football from Charlie Brown as he gets ready to kick it every single time. So I don't like that. I think it's a crutch. I think it's being disrespectful of fans. I've always said it. And if you want Leagues Cup to be successful and you want it to be more like a combined league of sorts, like MLS and League MX, everybody's playing each other, you need to be able to balance that schedule. And you need it to be home and away every single time. Otherwise, MLS teams are not going to grow as quickly as we might want them to grow. And this rivalry between both of these leagues is not going to be as even as we would want it to be. So that's exactly the reason why I said at the top of the show, like, hey, I had really high hopes for this rivalry in CONCACAF over the next 5 or 6 years. I was like, MLS is going to win 3 of these things. Now I'm not so sure, because even in lean years, quote, like lean years for Liga MX, Chivas isn't playing in this tournament. Chivas is having a hell of a tournament. They're probably going to be in this tournament next year. What does that mean for MLS teams? Messi's going to be 39 next year. Luis Suarez is probably going to be retired. Inter Miami might have a new coach. Is it all going to be Seattle? Is LAFC going to have to retool? Are we going to need to have teams come in basically out of nowhere like San Diego did for MLS to have a shot at winning this tournament? Like, what else can be done? Like, can you stack CONCACAF so that there are 14 MLS teams next season? Again, that just seems really, really sad and really insulting to MLS fans. So if they want Leagues Cup organizers, and I know that that's a joint venture between MLS and League MX, if they want this rivalry to get better, they need to stop disrespecting fans and maybe create a tournament or a system in which anytime it's MLS versus Liga MX, MLS teams, they got to go into the rough stadiums, man. They got to go into Monterrey. They got to go into Pachuca and Toluca and Mexico City and Tijuana. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen for them.
Oh man, the nightmare fuel for me is, could you imagine what would happen if Liga MX did win Leagues Cup and got
in the States? Yeah,
they got four additional spots. They got 10 Liga MX teams versus 5 or 6 MLS teams. It'd be even worse, right? So yeah, I'm done with Leagues Cup. I don't even credit it anymore. I think it's a joke. This is the only tournament that matters when these two leagues play against each other. This is the only one that should have ever mattered. No other leagues in the world play each other in some weird makeshift money grab to get spots for the Champions League. It's a joke. I'm done with Leagues Cup. I don't give it. I don't care if it's played in Mexico. I don't care if the lower teams from both leagues are playing each other. I want to see the best teams from each league play each other. I don't care about it anymore. It means nothing to me. It's over with. It was a novelty item. I'm done with it. And MLS still has a lot of issues. Eric, we've talked about this for years. The schedule's being changed. The spending has to increase. That needs to happen ASAP because the depth Liga MX has is just too much. Yes, the star power is equal, but the depth is still very, very different. And there's a huge gap because, I was looking at this and I've said this before. Liga MX teams, some of them have what would be equivalent to 9 to 11 DPs on MLS because they can spend $3 million on a center back. They can spend $4 million on a central midfielder. They can spend $4 million on a goalkeeper. MLS can't do that. And I feel like that is always going to put them at a disadvantage. And I think this year's cooked. I would be shocked if MLS. This is the least optimistic I've ever felt about MLS heading into a quarterfinals. I think they are finished, my friend. I don't think they're winning it this year.
Yeah, it's sad to say because we want this rivalry to do well. We want these teams to square off and to really, more so than bad blood on the pitch. Like we want upsets, we want memorable moments. And, one of those leagues is not they're not putting up their end of the bargain. And you're absolutely right. Once MLS gets rid of the salary cap or allows teams to be way more flexible in signing top level players, that I've said it so many times. I've said it, coming on your show. That's going to make Liga MX take a long, hard look in the mirror and say, we need to do a lot of, new and different things to make sure that we don't lose out on this particular rivalry. And one of the big things, and we can talk about this next time I'm on, dude, we are seeing a lot of American owners coming into Liga MX, and that is going to make their teams a lot stronger because there will be more money to spend. So that's even worse news for MLS.
Eric, I appreciate you coming on, my friend. Before I let you go, can you tell the people where they can find you at on X or anywhere else where your work's at?
Heck yeah. Yeah. X and Blue Sky is Eric Gomez 86. We're ESPN FC and ESPN Deportes for your Spanish speaking listeners. But yeah, dude, I mean, this is going to be really interesting. We've been covering this tournament, you and I, for so many years. And I'm just, again, like I feel cheated as a fan, but it is what it is.
Well, folks, we'll see what happens. Not feeling too good about it, but we'll have Eric on next time when we get down to the semifinals, and we will see if there are any MLS teams remaining. If you guys enjoy this, make sure you give it a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that little bell notification so you never miss a video. Until next time, guys, I'll see you all soon.